There's a price to telling the truth, but sometimes you don't realize how high that price is until it's too late. Growing up, I always believed in the idea that family comes first. It was the kind of family where we stuck together no matter what. Sure, there were fights here and there, small arguments over who gets the last piece of pie, or whose turn it was to clean the garage, but in the end, we always made up. My parents were supportive, my siblings were my best friends, and our family gatherings were filled with laughter. Everything felt normal, predictable, safe. But there's something you should know about families like mine. Sometimes there's a dark side that you don't see until it's too late. A side where secrets are buried so deep, even the closest of family members can't see them. I didn't know it then, but my family was hiding one of the biggest secrets I would ever come across. And that secret involved my uncle. Uncles are supposed to be the fun ones, right? The ones who tell you stories, who slip you a little extra candy when your parents aren't looking, who make you laugh with their silly jokes. That's what I thought of my uncle for the longest time. He was always the life of the party, always smiling, always making everyone around him feel like they were the most important person in the room. He was the favorite. Everyone loved him. But looking back now, I realized that something didn't feel right. It was subtle at first, small things that didn't quite add up. I noticed how he would sometimes disappear for hours when he came to visit, or how he would avoid certain conversations when they got too personal. It wasn't until I was older, when I started paying attention to the things adults usually brush off, that I began to see the cracks in his picture-perfect image. At family gatherings, people would whisper behind closed doors when they thought I wasn't listening. I heard snippets of conversations, words like money and disappearing and trouble, but no one ever seemed to say the full story out loud. I didn't know what it all meant at the time, but I knew it wasn't good. Then one night, it happened. My family was all gathered in the living room for a regular Sunday dinner. We were laughing, talking, and catching up on life when my uncle started talking about a new business venture he was involved in. Nothing unusual, right? He'd always had a way with words, smooth, convincing, as if he could sell you anything. But that night, something about the way he was speaking struck me as off. There was an urgency in his voice, a desperation that I hadn't noticed before. And then, out of nowhere, I heard it. He casually mentioned something that made my stomach drop. He was talking about money, lots of money, and how he needed it, and how he would do anything to make sure he got what he wanted. In that moment, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. This wasn't just about business. There was something darker at play here, something that wasn't just illegal, it was dangerous. I was sitting there, in the middle of that conversation, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. My uncle wasn't the man everyone thought he was. He wasn't the fun-loving guy who had everyone's best interests at heart. He was hiding something much darker. I couldn't just sit there and pretend I didn't hear what he said. It felt wrong, like a weight pressing on my chest. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew the risks of speaking up. The truth, after all, wasn't just going to be uncomfortable for him. Was going to change everything for my family. I wasn't prepared for the fallout, but I knew deep down I couldn't keep quiet. Not when I knew the truth. But little did I know, revealing the truth would cost me everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and trust. The decision to speak up wasn't easy. For days, I struggled with the weight of the secret I had uncovered. I knew that once I said something, there was no going back. I wasn't just going to be exposing my uncle for what he was. It was going to destroy everything I had ever known. But I couldn't keep quiet. The truth felt like a heavy stone in my chest, pressing down on me, reminding me that I couldn't pretend I hadn't heard what I did. So I did what I thought was right. I gathered my courage, took a deep breath, and decided to speak to my parents about it. I figured if anyone would understand, it would be them. After all, family is supposed to have each other's backs, right? We were always taught to be loyal, honest, and supportive. So, surely, my parents would appreciate me looking out for them, looking out for the whole family by telling them the truth about my uncle. I didn't know it then, but that conversation was going to be the moment that would change everything. I remember sitting at the dinner table one evening, the air thick with tension. I wasn't sure how to start, so I just dove right in. "I need to tell you something about Uncle Mark," I said. My voice cracked slightly, betraying the nervousness I was trying so hard to hide. I glanced up to see my parents exchange a quick, concerned look. "Is everything okay?" my mom asked, her voice soft but wary. I could tell she was preparing for some kind of family drama, but I don't think she was ready for what I was about to say. I overheard him talking about something illegal. He's involved in something dangerous. I think he's been lying to all of us, I said, my voice shaking. He's been hiding something for a while now, and it's getting worse. He's using us, using all of you. For a second, there was silence. My parents just stared at me, their faces a mix of confusion and disbelief. I could see the shock in their eyes, but there was something else to a flicker of defensiveness. It was as if they couldn't or didn't want to believe what I was saying. What exactly are you talking about? My father finally spoke, his tone sharp. It wasn't anger, not yet, but there was a certain edge to his voice that made me nervous. He's been getting involved in shady business deals, I said. He's been making promises he can't keep, and I think he's in some kind of trouble. I overheard him talking about needing money, and he was desperate. He would do anything to get it. I think he's lying to you, Dad. I think he's lying to all of us. My parents exchanged another look. My mother's face had softened, but there was still an air of disbelief. My father, on the other hand, looked angry not at me, but at the situation. He didn't want to hear what I was saying. It was as though his mind couldn't process the idea that the brother he had known all his life could be involved in something like this. Don't be ridiculous, my father snapped. Mark would never do something like that. He's a good man. He's been nothing but supportive of this family. You must have misunderstood something. I felt the blood rush to my face. He didn't believe me. He couldn't believe me. But I had heard it, plain as day. I wasn't mistaken. I'm telling you, Dad, I'm not lying, I said, trying to stay calm. He's hiding something from all of us. He's using you, using us to cover up whatever it is he's involved in. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. My father stood up suddenly, his face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, he said, shaking his head. You're accusing your uncle of something without any proof. If you have a problem with him, you should have talked to him directly. You have no right to bring this up like this. Not in front of the whole family. You're being disrespectful. I felt a tight knot in my stomach. My mother's face had grown pale, and her eyes were wide with disbelief. She looked as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she just sat there, frozen, and then came the words I never expected to hear. You're making this up, my father said, his voice colder now. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're not welcome in this house anymore. If you can't trust family, then there's no place for you here. I won't have you tearing this family apart over baseless accusations. I couldn't believe it. My mind went blank. I had never imagined, in my wildest dreams, that my own parents would turn on me like this. The feeling of betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. How could they choose to ignore the truth? How could they defend someone who was clearly hiding something dark? And just like that, in an instant, everything changed. The words I had been dreading to hear had finally come out. You're no longer welcome here. They didn't even give me a chance to explain. I was standing there, in shock, with the cold hard truth hanging in the air like a storm cloud. My own parents, the people who had always taught me the value of honesty, had just disowned me because I spoke the truth about someone they refused to see for what he really was. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt, it was the fact that I had tried to protect them, to protect all of us, and it was met with anger and betrayal. How could the people I trusted the most choose to protect a lie over the truth? That night, I walked out of the house, the door slamming behind me. The truth had come at a price, and now, I was paying the cost. It didn't take long for the weight of what had just happened to sink in. I'd left the house that night, but I didn't really leave. The pain of my parents' rejection followed me everywhere I went. Like a shadow I couldn't shake off. The world felt different. Like I was standing on the edge of something huge, looking down at a long dark drop. I couldn't go back home, not after what had been said. But where was I supposed to go? My entire sense of safety and comfort had been ripped away in one moment. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to process everything. I stayed with friends, but it wasn't the same. They were supportive, sure, but they couldn't understand the depth of the betrayal I felt. They didn't know what it was like to have the people you loved most turn their backs on you without even hearing you out. No one truly understood what I had just lost. I didn't even know if I could fully grasp it myself. My phone didn't stop buzzing with messages, but they weren't from anyone who had my back. No, these were messages from them, from my parents. They were angry, hurt, and they were trying to convince me I was wrong. They didn't want to hear that my uncle had been hiding something from them for years. They wanted me to apologize, to take back what I'd said. They told me I was ruining the family, that I was being selfish, that I didn't understand how hard things were for everyone, but how could they not see? How could they not understand that I wasn't trying to tear the family apart? I was trying to protect them, to help them see the truth before it was too late. Yet, no matter how many times I tried to explain, they refused to listen. Their loyalty to my uncle was stronger than their loyalty to me, and that hurt more than anything. I tried reaching out to them a few times after that night. I sent texts, I called, I even wrote letters. I told them I loved them, that I was sorry, they felt betrayed, and that I never wanted to hurt them. But every time I tried, it felt like the distance between us grew even wider. My dad would send me short, cold messages. Not now. You're wrong. Leave us alone. My mom didn't even reply. She just stayed silent. That silence was deafening. It was like I had been erased from their lives. I remember one evening, I was sitting at a diner by myself, staring at the half-eaten food in front of me. The place was buzzing with chatter, but I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind kept going, back to my family, my parents, my siblings, everyone I had known my entire life. They were all gone, like I had never existed in their world. I felt so, small. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't just the loss of my parents. It was the fact that they didn't care enough to even try to understand. How could they just blindly defend my uncle, knowing what he was capable of? And how could they not see that I was just trying to help? That night, I had finally come to terms with something. There was no going back. Not now, not ever. But the consequences didn't stop there. Soon after, I started hearing rumors. They spread quickly, faster than I could have ever imagined. People in our extended family began whispering behind my back. Some said I was crazy, others that I had some personal vendetta against my uncle. Some even claimed that I was just looking for attention. A few people actually called me a liar, suggesting that I was making up the whole story for some kind of twisted reason. It hurt in ways I couldn't even explain. The family I thought I knew, people I had loved and trusted on me. They sided with my uncle, who was still playing the part of the perfect, charming family member. They believed his lies, his smooth words, over the truth I had tried to expose. I could hear their voices in the back of my mind, their dismissals ringing in my ears, calling me crazy, calling me wrong. But what stung the most was the feeling of being completely isolated. I wasn't just losing my parents. I was losing everyone. It was as if I had been erased from the family's history. I was the black sheep now, the one who didn't belong, the one who would never be accepted again. I began to question myself. Was I really wrong? Had I misjudged everything? But deep down, I knew I hadn't. I knew I had done the right thing, even if no one else could see it. The truth was, I was being punished for something I didn't even feel sorry for. I wasn't sorry for speaking up. I wasn't sorry for telling the truth. But I was sorry that I had to lose everything in order to do it. I thought about what my life had been before all this. The family dinners, the holidays, the laughter. But now, those memories felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The people who had once been my world had now become strangers, and all because I dared to speak up. I kept reminding myself that truth is supposed to set you free, right? But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a prison. I was living in the aftermath of a bomb that I didn't even know I'd dropped until it was too late. And every day, I fought against the voice in my head that told me I should have kept quiet. But I knew I couldn't have. Not if I wanted to live with myself. I was starting to understand now that the truth was dangerous. It had cost me my family, my reputation, and my peace of mind. And yet I couldn't take it back. Once the truth is out, it's out. You can't put it back in the bottle. The days bled into weeks, and the weeks into months. Life outside of my family's world didn't get easier, but it did get quieter. At first, I had thought that time would heal everything, that the pain would eventually fade, that the absence of my family in my life would become something I could tolerate. But the truth was, I didn't know how to live in a world where the people I loved most didn't even know who I was anymore. It wasn't just the isolation that hurt. It was the constant wondering. Every time I passed someone who knew me from before, someone who once smiled at me with warmth or shared a laugh at family gatherings, felt like I was carrying a heavy weight on my shoulders. How could they look at me the same way now? How could they look at me and not see the person who had been torn apart for telling the truth? I couldn't escape it. The whispers from family members, the looks of pity, the awkward silences when people would mention my name. I wasn't just a person anymore. I was a story, a cautionary tale. I was the one who broke the family. I was the one who couldn't let the past go, the one who betrayed them. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when I felt a flicker of hope. When I met new people, when I made new friends, I started to feel like I could build something again, something separate from the wreckage of my old life. I started to rebuild the pieces of myself that I had buried in the rubble. I even found myself laughing again, and for a moment, I felt free. Yet I couldn't escape the gnawing emptiness. The truth had set me free in one sense, but it had left a hollow space where my family had once been. I couldn't replace them, no matter how many new friendships I made or how many normal moments I shared with other people. The void was still there. I often thought about the price I had paid for speaking up. Was it worth it? Would I have been happier if I had just stayed silent and let my uncle continue his charade? Would my parents have stayed in my life if I had ignored the red flags, looked the other way, and pretended everything was fine? The answer wasn't clear. There were days when I wished I could turn back time, when I wished I could go back to that night and choose silence over truth. But then I reminded myself of something I had known deep down all along. The truth may cost you everything, but it's the only thing that doesn't leave you empty in the end. It's the only thing that keeps you whole, even when everything else is falling apart. I could never regret speaking the truth, not because I thought I was better than my family for doing it, but because, at the end of the day, I had to live with myself. I had to look at myself in the mirror and know that I was being true to who I was, even if it meant losing everything. That's a price I could accept. I had told the truth. I had done what was right, even when it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt sometimes. I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, wondering if I'll ever get my family back. I wonder if there will ever be a moment when we all sit together again, when the air is thick with laughter instead of silence, when we can all forgive each other and move on. But I know deep down that it might never happen, that the distance between us might be too wide to bridge, and maybe that's the hardest part of all, accepting that I may never get the family I once had, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. And though the path ahead is uncertain, I know that the truth I spoke has shaped who I am today. It's made me stronger. I can't take back the past, but I can choose how I move forward. And I choose to move forward knowing that I am not defined by the lies I didn't tell or the silence I didn't keep. I choose to move forward with the knowledge that no matter what happens, I did the right thing. If it cost me everything, and in the end, maybe that's all that matters. If you've ever faced the difficult choice between silence and truth, you know how powerful the impact can be sometimes. The truth doesn't set you free the way you expect, but in the end, it shapes who you are. If you've experienced something similar, or if you've been on the receiving end of someone else's truth, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below, and let's start a conversation about the price of honesty, the pain of betrayal, and the strength it takes to speak up when everything is on the line. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories about the difficult choices we face in life. And remember, you're not alone in your journey. Speak your truth. Stay strong.